Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing today? Question I get asked a lot is, what is my favorite TV and what's the best TV of 2019? I can't give you the best TV of 2019, but I'm going to give you my top five, my personal top five. Like, if I were to have a choice in a single screen size, which would be my top five in order, from number 5 to number 1. So let's start with number 5. And coming in at number 5, it is the... I'm new to this, guys, so bear with me. I never did any screen recording before, so this is my first time doing it. And I'm going to go through some of the ratings on Artings. I'm not the biggest fan. I'm not going to knock Artings, but I don't go by their numbers only because everybody's eyes are different. So what they consider accurate, I may not consider accurate to my eyes. Shootouts, reviews, I think this is all subjective. And in my opinion, I'm not a guy who goes towards reference. So if reference is the standard, I don't really follow that. Even though I own an A9G, which many reviewers said that it's the closest to reference, I don't really go by that. That's not the reason why I bought this TV set. I'm going to show you what I mean when I'm going through some of these TV sets one by one. So coming in at number 5 is the Q80R. This is my pick of number 5 best TV of 2019. And it has very good reviews here. The X wide angle is a new feature. Takes away a little bit of the contrast, but I don't think it's a big deal. If you buy this TV set compared to last year, you're going to have pros and you're going to have cons. You might have a little bit of con in terms of the contrast, but overall, I looked at this TV set and I think the colors are a little better, in my opinion. They're not as wide as last year. Like, some of the neon colors are not as punchy, but it's still very punchy compared to everything else that's out there. Every other kind of technology, whether it be OLED or regular LCDs, you're still going to get a very punchy picture. You're just not going to get, maybe a little bit drop off from last year, but it's not. They did this because what they wanted to do is get the color a little more accurate. So in my opinion, this is for Samsung standards, very, they did a really good job with the skin tones. The skin tones are a lot better than they were last year. Last year's TV sets were a little bit off. This year, and I'm talking about uncalibrated, guys. So, if somebody can go in there and calibrate and get everything right, things change. But from what I saw, from comparing various uncalibrated sets, I would have to say this is my number 5. It doesn't have that many zones, so that's why it's not going to get, higher than this. But overall, it's solid. Pros and cons. Pros, brightness is pretty decent. Color is pretty wide and pretty rich. Contrast is pretty good. The black bars, in my opinion, they do it way better than Sony. So for LCD, the black bars are really good. Can't go wrong with this TV set. Weaknesses: no Dolby Vision. That may be a weakness to some, but for me, it's not a big deal. Maybe a little bit less bright, a little bit less contrast than last year. That's a con. But not a major con, because the differences are over here. You see these numbers and you'll be like, okay, the difference is huge from last year, but it's not really huge. They improved a lot of the other aspects, like uniformity, from what I saw. The gaming is really good. Gaming features, the input lag is amazing on this TV. I think 13 milliseconds. Color's pretty spot on. And that's my number 5. So moving on, my number 4 TV set for 2019 will be the LG C9. Now this may shock many of you, because this is rated number 1 TV set according to Artings. I disagree. I don't think this is the number 1 TV set. I rank it number 4. It's one of the top TV sets, but the reason why I'm rating it at number 4 is simply the processing is just not as good as Sony and Samsung. Especially, it was a lot closer to Samsung last year, but not this year. This year, Samsung has really stepped up their game in terms of processing. I think they're using the same processor, but it's just tweaked a little bit on the C8. Excellent TV set. It has all the flaws that are inherent in OLED technology, such as ABL, and I wouldn't say ABL, because ABL in the past was a big issue with OLEDs. They've improved that this year, but it's just not going to be as bright as an LCD TV, so that is a weakness, and that's a weakness for every OLED. Just like, black uniformity is a weakness for every LCD. Like over here we have the peak brightness numbers. I don't really go by that. The numbers are pretty good for an OLED, but in my opinion, from judging this set compared to other OLEDs last year, I don't see a big difference. The peak brightness is not really any better than last year. It's about the same. So, not saying that's bad, but in general, 2019 sets are not anything revolutionary. You're not going to see huge increases in performance in any one of these. But the reason why I have this TV set as number 4 and not any higher is because, in my opinion, the processing when watching cable TV, to me, it matters a lot. So they just don't do as well as other companies. LG is just not, they can't touch Sony. They can't touch Samsung when it comes to image processing. They can't touch Sony, and they can't touch Samsung when it comes to motion. And the problem, you're going to see the motion on this TV set is just not as good as the other ones in my list. So that's going to knock it down a few places. I'll tell you, if the processing and the motion were better, this would probably be my number 1 TV set of 2019. Does everything else really, really well. I'm just talking about picture quality here, guys. Intangibles such as burn-in, that's a weakness with all OLEDs. Obviously, I'm going to mention this as a con, because I'm going to mention a con for every OLED. If you're worried about burn-in, avoid this TV set, because OLEDs do burn in if you're not careful. So it's not overblown. It's a reality. So I don't go by these numbers, because you see color volume is very low on OLED. I disagree. I think the color is fantastic on the OLED in terms of like the richness of the color. I don't know. I don't really go by these numbers. My eyes tell me different, tell me something different than what these numbers tell me. But overall, due to processing and the motion were my 2 minor gripes with this TV set. Other than that, it's fantastic, so it's going to get my number 4 spot. Moving on, number 3. And this may shock you as well. My number 3 TV set of 2019 will be the Sony 950G. Now, this is the only TV set that is not, considered flagship. That's on my top 5. It's a mid to high TV set. What I love about this TV set is you get a lot for the money. You get really, really accurate color, really improved richness of color this year. The numbers here is not going to show you, but it's more vibrant than the 900F or the 900E, in my opinion. The contrast is, it's just it's going to have the same contrast as other TV sets that are mid to high range, like 900E, 930E, 940E, 900F. They're all going to be in the same ballpark when it comes to contrast, so they're just not, going to be as good as Samsung's LCDs when it comes to contrast. That's a weakness. But a strength compared to Samsung is going to be shadow detail. You get way better shadow detail than Samsung. Samsung has improved their shadow detail this year for 2019, but it's not going to be, nowhere near Sony. Look at these numbers. SDR, peak brightness. It's a very bright TV. What I love about this TV is the specular highlights, man. I mean, they did a great job. It's the X1 Ultimate chipset, and watching sports on this guy is an awesome experience. I watch a lot of sports, so for me that factors in there. And this is probably the reason why I have this ahead of the C9. I like the processing way better, so the C9 is going to be a better TV in some certain categories. So, you know, a lot of people are going to be up in arms. Oh, how can you say it's better than OLED? There's no way it's better than OLED. This is my top 5, guys, for my viewing habits, my viewing environment, and my viewing habits. My top 5 according to my viewing, what I like, you know, to factor into my decision. So everybody's different. If you want a more dark room cinematic TV, of course I'm gonna have the C9 higher than this. But you know, when there's good content to watch, when it's, you know, 1080p, upscaling and processing, that was the weakness on the C9. So not a weakness here. This is probably the best TV on the market, the best LCD on the market when it comes to upscaling. So you're gonna have great 1080p. You're gonna have awesome motion on this TV set. The motion is outstanding. You're gonna have, you know, really solid color. It's good all around. It's an all around great TV. You know, I would recommend this for most living rooms. Football season's coming around. Somebody wants to buy a TV set. This is the one, guys. You know, the price is not like, you know, OLED, you know, some of the OLEDs out there, and you're gonna get good processing, good cable. I have a good buddy of mine. I recommended him a C9. I told him, listen, you want the best, but he didn't want to spend, you know, A9G money or super high end like 75-inch prices. So I told him, yeah, no. He found an LG in his price range. He returned it the next day. Why? He's like, I don't know. Football looked blurry. Yeah, I went there. I checked it out. You know, C9. I had a C8 before, so I know the feeling, man. You know, you get the TV set. Your sources are not perfect. You take it home, and you think you're gonna have top of the line. You're not. So keep that in mind when you're considering these TV sets. So this is the reason why I have this ahead of the LG C9. Overall, great. But there are some cons to the 950G. One major con, blooming. I'm sorry, it's not a major con. It's a minor con. A lot of people are making it out to be a major con. It's a con on all LCDs. It's a little higher on Sony than it is on other brands such as Samsung. And other TV brands, I believe, out there that are full array, that have a lot more zones. This TV doesn't have a lot of zones, so when it gets really bright, you're gonna get a little bit of elevated black levels on the black bars. So if that's something that really bothers you, then I would go with the Samsung. But you get other benefits to the Sony. That's why I have this as one of my top TVs for 2019. And I'm moving along. Number 2 TV set for 2019. Which will it be, guys? Will it be Vizio, TCL? Samsung Q90R. Number 2 TV set of 2019. This is the top review TV set according to Artings. Again, you know, some things I agree with Artings, some things I don't agree. Overall score, best LCD out there. I agree with this. There's some controversy with this TV set. Contrast ratio. Let's go down here. My opinion on contrast ratio. I compared this TV side by side to last year's model, and other people may get affected differently. You know, some people are more sensitive to contrast than others. So, you know, these numbers look really low and scary. 32, 49. I'm sorry. The contrast with local dimming looks good, but the native contrast, that's an eye. You know, that's eye popping. It might come into play depending on the scenes. Maybe I didn't watch a certain enough, you know, amount of scenes where the local dimming doesn't kick in, and then you have the native contrast, and the native contrast is pretty awful. But I think the algorithm does a good job where the native contrast doesn't show when you're watching regular content. So, with that being said, contrast side by side with Q9FN, there's not a huge difference. The Q9FN may get a little darker, but you got to have them side by side. You got to be really nitpicky, in my opinion, to pick one over the other. But the benefits of this TV set compared to last year, the Q9FN, shadow detail, much, much better. Still not as good as Sony, nowhere near as good as Sony in terms of shadow detail, but it doesn't have that black crush that the Q9FN had. Q9FN, I'm sorry, not black crush. I would say, not as, how would I say it? You get the aggressive local dimming. It's going to make the TV darker, but it's going to make dark scenes a little darker than you want them to be. I don't know if I would call it black crush. Black crush, last time I had black crush on the TV was a really old OLED, like 5 years ago when they first came out, and that thing was crushing blacks left and right. So maybe black crush is not the correct word, but I think this set is an improvement over the Q9FN in terms of shadow detail. You're going to see more detail in the scenes. Like, let's say somebody, it's a dark scene and you see somebody's brown, leather coat. You're going to see the brown color sticking out a little more. Like, you could tell that it's brown, even though it's dark brown, it's a dark scene. Whereas on the Q9FN, it might look black. It might look, really, really dark. More dark than it should. On the Q9FN, you're going to get more detail on the TV, so that's a pro. So they basically traded contrast for shadow detail, pretty much. You have the wide viewing angle, which is good for some people. If you're seated wide, I think this TV is going to sell a lot of units this year, only because at Best Buy it looks great. People see it from the side. They don't know things like viewing angle and things like that. So when they're walking to the TV from an angle, they're going to look at the TV beneath it or next to it. They're going to look at the Sony. They're going to look at that, and they're going to look at it from an angle, and they're going to see, oh wow, it looks so much better. That's because the viewing angles are improved thanks to the filter. But they're going to sell a lot of TVs. That's why Samsung decided to go that route. They feel that they're going to sell a lot more units, and they will. But, it comes a little bit at the expense of some of the other stuff. But all in all, not a deal breaker. It's still solid all around. It's really, really bright. HDR looks fantastic. Again, con is no Dolby Vision, but, that doesn't bother me. As long as it's HDR 10, I'm good. No big loss for me, personally, but it is a con for a lot of you guys. I get it. Peak brightness is good. Comparing these numbers to last year, maybe a little bit lower, but I can't really tell. It looks bright enough. Most scenes. This is the area where I think they do a much better job than last year. Great uniformity, dirty screen effect was a big complaint. Panelato last year. I checked some of these out in the stores, and what I did was I compared like 3 or 4. And one of the white screens that they have, one of the Xbox demos, I looked at it from the side, because the dirty screen effect gets amplified when you're viewing it from an angle. So I didn't see much at all in this year's model. So that's another improvement. They basically refined last year's model. That's what's good about it. Last year's model was already fantastic. This year's model is even better. In my opinion, I give this the number 2. Not one thing I forgot to mention. One of the reasons why this got elevated to number 2, I love the AI processing on this TV set. It really leaps and bounds ahead of LG. And when you're watching something like sports, the lack of ringing, the lack of jagginess in the image is something that Samsung really, really improved on this year. So when you're watching lower bitrate content, it looks way better than last year. Not that last year was bad. I still think they were just slightly ahead of LG last year. I think they're way ahead of LG, and they're approaching near Sony level in terms of processing and upscaling this year. Not necessarily in terms of motion. Motion is pretty much just a little bit improved, but not a lot. But in terms of like the sharpness, way sharper. Lower bitrate content looks way better this year than last year. And another improvement, also the improvements that I mentioned on the Q80R goes hand in hand with this guy. It improved a lot on the color. It improved a lot on the accuracy. color fidelity. It's just, in my opinion, overall, as an overall product for my needs, I think it's a better product than last year, and I would put it in the number 2 spot for this year. Now, some of you may be wondering why I didn't pick the Vizio, why I didn't pick the TCL. These companies are great, and they're getting there. Hisense, another fantastic TV, but I just don't think they're there yet with their color, their out-of-the-box color, number 1. Okay, that matters to me, because when I'm giving you my reviews here, I'm not giving you my reviews post-calibration. This might all change. These TVs might not even be in the top 5. You might have other TVs in the top 5. You know, if you're going post-calibration. I'm talking about out-of-the-box, stock settings. Hisense, Vizio, TCL, they improved. They're really going after these high-end brands in terms of the specs, and they're surpassing them in a lot of ways. However, and this is the big however, processing is just not nowhere near. It's not even the same league. Doesn't even compare. Doesn't even come close. Upscaling processing, Vizio, TCL, Hisense. Sorry guys, but for me to have a TV in the top 5, it's got to be at least good. From a scale of 1 to 10, it's got to be at least a 7 when it comes to upscaling and processing and motion. I give those TVs, lower than that. So that's one reason, it's a deal breaker for me, and that's why they didn't crack the top 5. So yeah, there you have it. Number 2 set. Number 1 TV set of 2019. Now this is another controversial one. I would say this is one of the most hated TV sets of 2019. Sony A9G OLED. The reason why, it won a shootout. Now, if a TV wins a shootout, controversy emerges. Oh, the shootout was fixed. The shootout was bullshit. That doesn't matter to me, honestly. I bought this TV set before the shootout happened. Had nothing to do with the shootout. I watch a lot of standard mode, so I don't care about DirectX 10. When I watch a cable TV, I'm watching standard mode. I'm turning on live color. I'm turning on the processing. What does it matter to me how a professionally calibrated reference monitor looks like? It has no effect on my viewing. So I get it. A lot of people looking for director's intent. So if that's the case, I would recommend this TV. But based on the results of the shootout. But I honestly, these things are not for me. Shootouts. If you look at my top 5 list, it's all over the place. Some are more accurate than others. I don't place a big emphasis on color accuracy. As long as they're decently accurate, as long as they're not like all over the place with the skin tones, I'm fine with that. I like a punchy image. I like a vibrant image. A9G OLED. First OLED that I really enjoyed watching sports on. Hockey. Fantastic. The ice doesn't look like other OLEDs. Like, it looks more like an LCD. Not as bright as an LCD, but it has that texture. It doesn't have that milkiness to the whites like other OLEDs in the past did, like my C8 did. Especially with ABL. Like, you're watching a hockey game, after a few seconds the screen starts dimming down. Not a problem with this guy. Artings here rated it one of the lowest TVs, one of the lowest OLEDs ever, 8.8. It's a good score, but for an OLED it's a really bad score. I totally disagree with this. But to each his own, you know what I mean? The calibration equipment didn't give this TV the best measurements, but in terms of what my eyes perceive, I completely disagree with their scores. So it doesn't look like it's the dimmest OLED, I'll tell you that. It looks brighter than my C8 did for a lot of content, thanks to less aggressive ABL. My AC8 had more aggressive ABL. So design, beautiful design. I love the remote control. What else do I like about this TV set? Obviously contrast, there's no question, it's an OLED. Processing, upscaling, superb, top of the line. Top of the line motion, top of the line video processing. Peak brightness, yeah, that's what people are gonna say. Oh, look, it's dim. It's not dim, guys. These numbers here don't translate to real life viewing very well. I mean, listen, it's not an OLED, so for an OLED, it's not dim. It's dim if you compare it to my old Z9D. Yeah, it's dim compared to Z9D. It's dim compared to my Q9FN in the bright scenes, but it's not dim compared to other OLEDs. Now, I compared this to LG. It's in the same ballpark. Maybe the LG is a little brighter, but you gotta have them side by side to see if one TV is brighter than the other. So I wouldn't say, you know, it's still a weakness in this TV set, but it's the same weakness all throughout all of the OLEDs, the peak brightness. So great uniformity, superb, all the 2019 panels. What set this apart, though, you know, it does have the processing and does have the upscaling. Color's very accurate, 7.1. I don't go by this number, guys, because, you know, I looked at the top TV sets of all time in terms of, like, out-of-the-box color accuracy according to Artings. And, you know, some of the TV sets there in the top 10 are not, you know, they will be like, you know, you'll be like, what? Why is it even in there? Yeah, I wouldn't go by that. That's a panel lottery thing, so, you know, it's not their fault. That's what the meter measured, and I understand that, but, you know, this is the lottery. The standards they have for accuracy, completely different than what you notice when you're at your house. This TV set out of the box, you know, very spot on in terms of the accuracy, at least to what I noticed. So, okay, going to color gamut. Again, you know, a lot of these numbers are slightly lower than last year, but when you're watching it in person, I notice that it's more vibrant than other OLEDs. I get more richness in the color. Hot color volume, they say it's low. I don't know. I don't know about that. The color is very rich, very rich. I've compared this to other past Sony OLEDs, A8F, A1E, and this set blows those out of the water. Way more vibrant, way better color, much less aggressive ABL. It's not an issue anymore. So processing is better. This new chipset does a way better job with cable TV than the older chipsets. And, you know, another weakness may be burn-in. Yeah, obviously, it's an OLED. You're going to have a risk. No matter what OLED you have, it's an equal risk, in my opinion. Obviously, more maintenance is required when it comes to OLEDs. Motion, 8.8. In my opinion, the motion is awesome on this TV. Awesome. Probably the best motion I've ever seen on a modern 4K TV set. So, if you guys are looking for an OLED that does better motion than the competition, if you're looking for an OLED that does better processing than the competition, and are willing to sacrifice maybe 10% brightness, which is not going to be really a noticeable difference unless they're side by side, but you're going to have less ABL, so that makes up for that brightness difference, then this is the TV for you. In my opinion, it's the best TV for 2019. Overall, the input lag, 25, 26 milliseconds. Most people should be fine with that. Now, it's not going to be as strong as some of the other ones in the top 5, but good enough for me, at least. So it's not an issue. Not an issue. These are my top 5, the way I judge a TV, according to my viewing habits. So, you know, everybody's viewing habits is different, and let me know what you think. What's your favorite? What's your favorite TV 2019? What's your top 5 of 2019? If you were to rate all these TV sets, you know, even other ones, even if you want to like put in Vizio, TCL, go right ahead, and you know, let's engage in a healthy back and forth, not a toxic, you know, mine is better than yours type of thing, because you know, I kind of lack patience when it comes to trolling, so I'm gonna, you know, call it out if I see it, and, you know, put an end to it right away. So keep it clean, guys. Healthy discussion. You know, everybody has a different opinion. I respect everybody's opinion. You know, as long as you're not putting down others, you're not, you know, criticizing others and, you know, engaging in this, like, you know, writing long stories and novels, like, you know, trying to, like, undermine somebody else's opinion. Everybody has an opinion. They share their opinion, you share your opinion. So just keep it clean, and let's have some fun with it, guys.